Well, the relationship networking is very important. Some people are looking at me now of, hey, you have this many units, you have this, you're lucky, you're lucky. I'm like, I worked my butt off this past, I mean, I was looking at some numbers and I'm like, the last 3 to 5 years, I have made 5 to 7 new calls a day. And I don't know what it comes out to. It's like, just figure out, 300 days a year times 5 calls. It's like 1,500 calls a year or something crazy. So I mean, but I was putting in the reps. I was putting in the calls. I was in the my first million of the deal room sprint in 6 weeks. I think I'm in the 10th sprint right now, 10th or 11th.
Welcome to the Healthy Investor Podcast with Bob Mastroianni, where you and I will learn from successful real estate investors, entrepreneurs, and other highly driven individuals about their journey and the healthy habits and routines that play an integral part of their growth. All right, welcome back to the Healthy Investor Podcast. I'm your host, Bob Mastroianni. Today I have with me Ryan Dumas. Ryan is a commercial finance expert. He has been working in commercial real estate financing for over 9 years and recently switched over to multifamily real estate investing. And in the last 7 months, he's already had over $100 million in assets under management, working on a bunch of different projects, working in some general partner positions, limited partner positions. And I'm really excited to have him on today to talk about just how that journey has gone and some of the tips and tricks maybe he can give us along the way. So Ryan, thanks so much for being here.
Hey Bob, thanks for having me on here. I appreciate it. I feel very welcomed and honored to be on here. I appreciate your time and everything. So thank you.
Great. So just before we get into your real estate investing and some of the investment opportunities that you've worked on, so you've been working in commercial real estate finance for the last 9 years, seen a couple different changes in the markets in the last 9 years. You probably just went through a whirlwind last couple of years. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you're seeing from a lending perspective related to multifamily properties right now.
I mean, just the real quick in the COVID, a lot of the banks and everything wanted, more money in reserves. The 6 months, 12 months reserves, their loan to values went down from 80% to 75 to 70%. And then it went back up again, once, I think it was like when COVID happened in March. So when back in like September to like the 2021 market went back up again, the loan to values, higher cash outs, certain limitations disappeared. And then now again with, recession, possible recession, whatever you want to call that is going on, banks are now going again. They're going back down to lower LTVs. They're not really doing much in reserves, but they're looking really, really deep on the KP, the sponsors. They're looking also at the asset. They're looking at experience, and they're looking at the asset. I know some people were like, "Hey, the rents are $700. We're gonna go to 1,200." But they're really looking at that area. Is the area, are the comps really 1,200 or more? Are they, what are the space, the square feet? So they're digging into the underwriting a little bit more. They're being a little more risky. But again, the last recession, we had in 08, 09, they didn't look at it too deep like that. Plus, we do have a lot of supply. And I think it's a little bit different because the rates went really high this last since February, March. The rates have gone up, I think, 250 to 300 basis points. And it's really hard for people to live in houses and rent houses right now. That if a house costs $3,000 to $4,000 a month to rent, depending on where you're at in the United States, $1,000 to $1,500 for an apartment might be a better option to be, especially if they have the laundry there, the pools, and everything else. So a lot of things are changing. But then with my financing background and being on the GP team on the deals we've closed, it's good being on those weekly calls to let other people know in their first and second deals, hey, I think we should do this. I think we should do that. So a lot of things are going on that we do need to focus on. You're right.
Yeah. So, for those who are listening to understand, but, there have been a couple times where I'm underwriting opportunities and looking at different properties. And Ryan's one of the people that I may call and say, hey, I'm underwriting this property and here's where I'm looking at interest rate? Is that realistic? Is this what you're seeing in the market? Or, here's what we're thinking as far as down payment is concerned, loan to value. Is that what you're seeing in the market? So it's really good to have someone who has, sort of their hand on the pulse of what's happening in the market right now, especially as some things are changing. So as Ryan mentioned, interest rates are starting to increase a little bit. Loan to value is starting to change a little bit. And banks, finance companies are still lending. They're just being a little bit more conservative about those things. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. I mean, and it's good, like you said, on the underwriting too. You don't want to overpromise your investors, just like bridge loans did, and they didn't know. They didn't know the rates were going to go this high. So say back in a year ago, November, a lot of these bridge lenders were given a 3, 4, 5% rate on their non-recourse bridge. And they're like, I'll give you a 4%. They'll probably come out at a 5% or 4.5% rate, because that's the rates were in the 3 to 5s.
Hmm.
Actually in the 4s then. So now if you're in a 5.5 or 6.5% rate now, that's 2% higher than they thought it was going to be. So if somebody's like, hey, we're going to give you a 7% pref on the deal, and you're right on with those numbers you have, now you're giving a 5% pref with just
Hmm.
the rate if you had an interest only. So
Yeah.
that's why it's good to get a fixed rate right now, but you don't want to get something too fixed. Again, we don't know where the rates are going to be. You don't. So investors are asking lots of questions. They're asking more questions now than they were, and then investing is getting a little bit harder too. But you got to find those investors that are not heavily invested into the stock market, because of those same reasons. But yeah, I would always, if you think your bank's going to do 75% loan to value, I would underrate at 70, depending on where you're at. I would always go down 5%. If you think you're going to get a 5% rate, I would always put 5.5%. If you think you're going to refinance in 12 or 18 months, and you ask me, I really don't know the exact crystal ball for it. But if you think you're going to, I would always go 150, maybe 200 basis points higher. But I really think the rates are going to go up 2 more times, is my guess.
Hmm.
And then I think they're going to go down pretty drastic for a good year, year and a half, going into a new presidential election, making everything look good again. That's just what I think.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think 75 basis points now, 50 next year, and then they go down. But who knows how things are going to go? There's just so much money in EIDL money for a lot of hotel owners, gas station owners, and businesses that flooded the market, that people are still buying stuff right now.
Hmm.
So,
Do you
but
see
yeah,
do you see opportunity related to and this is just sort of an interesting thought process that I have, I guess, properties that were purchased, I guess, over the last, maybe 2 years, or maybe even a little bit further out than that, where they had an interest only period that was 2 to 3 years, and now all of a sudden they're coming out of that interest only period and rates are a lot higher, and maybe they plan to do interest only for 2 years and then maybe do a refinance or something. Do you think that are you seeing anyone struggling right now due to those rate changes? Or, I mean, I guess the reality is that most of them are already locked into what their next rate was going to be, correct?
yeah. I mean, so kind of like I briefly said about, but just say it was anything before February when the rates went up, people were used to those 3 or 4% rates that they were for a while. So if they were thinking they were going to come out of it at 3.5, 4.5, 5%, I'm sorry, 3.5 or 4%. Now it's 5.5 to 6.5, and it's still without these next two rate hikes. So if they haven't refinanced out yet, or if they haven't stabilized and they don't have a good trailing 6 or trailing 12 yet, and the rates are still escalating, that's less money to pay out.
Hmm.
Plus the rates are higher, so they get fixed at a 6.5 or 7% rate. Some of these local banks, I've heard they're in the sevens. I mean, I'm seeing still 6.5. I'm seeing some 5.99s. But yes, if you have a interest only loan, I've heard a couple people going, "Hey, can you give me interest only at 4.5, 5%?" I'm like, "No, it's in the sixes to sevens now." And they're like, "Well, I have to meet my debt service. I have to be in this range." So
Hmm.
yeah, you're going to start seeing some defaults, some foreclosures that are in there. And then also with securities, if you promised, one thing is the rates are still going up. The rental rates are still going up, which is good. But if you're in a rural area and people don't want to be there, and it's in the place where they don't want, and your rents were 600, now they're $900. If they don't like living there, they'll just move out and go somewhere else because people can work from anywhere now.
Yeah.
So again, you got to be in that place where people want to be, and I hope you didn't over renovate your place there to charge 300 or 400 bucks more a month. But yeah, any of those on market deals that the broker realtor is like, oh, you can get this amount, and people were not wanting to pay that amount. They're going to start being late where it's at, but you just got to be careful on that. So I mean, but that is pretty deep, and there are going to be more and more people once this next rate hike goes up. If you're going to be in the 7.5 range, if it starts being 3% more than they thought it was going to be, and people didn't put a rate increase in their pro forma, it's going to be big. If you thought you're in 4% rate on a permanent and 7, you're going to pay 7% pref. It's going to be now 3, and your investors are not going to be happy.
Yeah.
So, and if you didn't increase the rents that much, there's going to be some deals that are going to fall short, and then there's going to be some deals that the non-recourse bridge lenders for the interest only, they'll do a 2-year or 3-year, but once you've passed that extension and you can only do one more year, there's people that have renovated units that are going to be selling them for what they bought them for. Some people are going to be selling for what they bought them for minus the down payment.
Sure.
So there's going
Well,
to
it'd
be
be
some,
interesting to see. Yeah. It's very interesting to see
yeah,
where the market's going at this point. So you,
yeah, it's turning into the buyer's market. I mean, it really has. There was deals that we were on that were like 10 bidders. Now there's stuff in Dallas. There's only 2 or 3 bidders on our 190 unit we just got awarded to today.
hmm, interesting. So you, couple things I know about you. One is that you're a very, very good and excellent relationship builder. I see you out there. I know that you are involved with a lot of, weekly meetings. You do some asset management meetings. You do a lot of networking. I see you traveling a bit, meeting up with people. So tell me how, as you've transitioned into larger multifamily, tell me how that relationship building and networking has really helped you.
Well, the relationship networking is very important. Some people are looking at me now of, hey, you have this many units, you have this, you're lucky, you're lucky. I'm like, I've worked my butt off this past, I mean, I was looking at some numbers and I'm like, the last 3 to 5 years, I have made 5 to 7 new calls a day. And I don't
Hmm,
know what it comes out to. It's like, just figure out, 300 days a year times 5 calls. It's like 1,500 calls a year or something crazy. So I mean, but I was putting in the reps. I was putting in the calls. I was in my first million out of the deal room sprint in 6 weeks. I think I'm in the 10th sprint right now, 10th or 11th. But yeah, I've been in that. I had a coach for about 7 to 8 months. I'm in Jake and Gino coaching program. I just signed up. I was telling Bob earlier. I just signed up for the family mastermind. It's held in
hmm,
Tampa twice a year. So I just keep being plugged in, keep networking. Don't go to too many conferences that you can't catch up and actually have a relationship with people. Um, don't be in too many of those rooms, but being in the big rooms, but also being in the small rooms, because I like it when you're in rooms of like 8 or 10, because then you don't know people more. I was in Javier's $1 billion boardroom in Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge last weekend, well, a week and a half ago, and there was 26 of us, so like 11, 12 couples plus a couple singles in there and everything, and really got to know a good 5 to 7 couples in there really well.
yeah.
Partner and I got to talk a lot. Javier, his wife, and I got to talk a lot and everything, and it's really important. But that's what it is when you're raising capital, when you're working on these deals, and people are talking about the numbers. It's not really the numbers; it's the people that are in your group. It's your team. So if you don't have a relationship, you can't. Oh, who's your partner? Where does he live? I don't know. I think it's Raleigh, North Carolina. I think it's Chicago. It's like, yeah, he lives in the northwest suburbs of Chicago, Illinois, and he's got 3,000 units, and Javier's closed on 12 apartments, and he's in Raleigh. I mean, you got to know your team, know your teammate, and um, but yeah, it's very important, those network and relationship. And like, we're going to Jake and Jen this weekend, and trying to meet up with some families that are there that have their kids there as well. It's important because you can work 12 hours, 15 hours a day, and then whatever, have your car or house or anything else, but it's that time that's really the most important thing with my family. So
Yeah, absolutely. So what let's talk a little bit about that. So in the last 7 months, you were able to um, be a partner on and acquire over $100 million in assets under management. Um, Tell me a little bit about, I guess, the roles that you prefer to play and sort of what your key responsibilities are with those type of properties.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I always tried to work in financing, but a lot of these syndicators and everything already had financing in place. So we worked with raising capital, and of course, I failed it a couple times with that. And the story about that is the first two people I failed at is the first two people that I've partnered with, which is kind of
Mm,
funny. But my partner, Madeline, business partner, she's in Orlando and she does asset management, and we work that together. She's I think she's about 1,000 units at least she's leased out in this last couple of years in Orlando to Texas area, Alabama, with other syndicators and other JV people that are out there. She's still working with I think three of them right now, but she does that on our assets. And then if there's a property manager that's having trouble leasing something out, or she'll go tour the properties. But we focus on asset management, financing, and then our investor relationships. So we pretty much raise capital together with all of our team members. But we focus heavily on it as well.
that's great. That's great. Well, and I've mentioned this a few times on my show already, that capital raising is something that I know I have to improve upon. It's a skill it's a very important skill set, but also not only raising the capital, but as you mentioned, the asset management and the relationship with your investors after the deal closes. Because, I think oftentimes when we're looking at a deal, we're thinking about raising the finances, we're thinking about raising the capital to get to closing. But that relationship after closing happens is also really important because, you want to make sure that your investors are happy and that you're doing what you said you were going to do on the deal, right?
It happens a lot. I mean, just to touch on that real quick is I've had a couple people that are like, "Well, what do you do after you close and all that?" And I'm like, "Well, we have our monthly newsletter that comes out, but even better than that, I mean, I'm like, hey, I just visited the property, and if I had four investors on a deal that I closed, because usually it's not like 20 or 30, but it's usually like four or five big investors, and I'll call him or her, and I'll say, hey, we visited the property, we did a tour with one of our investors or our team. Here's some videos and everything. Just want to let you know that we increased rents for two of the units for $300. We thought we were going to do 200. We increased it more. Even after the hurricane, we had a newsletter was coming out, and I texted everybody. I said, "Hey, we did lose power for a day, I think it was, but no windows, no tree. There was a tree down. Everything's great." We asked our the tenants if they need anything. Everybody was fine. Their power was restored. It was a few hours or a day, so it was really quick.
Mm,
So I'm just thankful that in Naples they didn't get hurt, and then our property in Bradenton the same thing. But you just got to reach out and make sure. But also, um, when we do have any updates, I do try to text or email them also of whatever it may be of any pros or cons of anything. Hey, they just got some paint and some electrical work done. I just want to give you a text. It just happened last week. I know our newsletter is coming out in 3 weeks. Sometimes I give them a quick text on that, like, oh, thanks for the update. Most people don't
yeah,
update me until a month or 3 months later on everything. So it's really, really neat to be one step ahead. And then also, you can let them know, hey, I have another asset we're working on. But also finding out what your investors like, because some like depreciation, some like cash flow, some want a 2 year hold versus a 3 to 5. But you got to really, really know them and know your investors and really have that relationship with them.
sure. Well, I love hearing you talk about, and I'm glad to hear that everything was okay after the hurricane. And I could imagine, being a limited partner, an investor in an opportunity, and something happens like a hurricane. It goes through the town where you own your property, right, or where you are an investor in the property, and can almost picture, an investor sort of sitting there saying, man, I would love to know what's going on with my property, but our investor calls not for another 3 weeks. And I give you a lot of credit for just sort of jumping ahead of that and saying, hey, here's a quick text. We have everything under control. Fortunately, everyone was okay. We lost a little bit of power, but no major damage. And now the investor can sit back and say, hey, these operators, these general partners, they're thinking of me. They know that I'm probably sitting here concerned, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where the property is, how's it, what kind of condition is it in? So that's good. I give you a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, it is. And then them weekly calls, kind of like you touched about earlier, is like, hey, I know our weekly calls goes out in 3 weeks. I'm like, can you send it out next week? So we had a couple of things we talked about for the next weekly convo, and we sent it out to them actually early and said, hey, we usually send this out on the 4th, but we're going to send this out on the 24th. We want to update you, getting everything too. But yeah, it's good to copy and paste like I did. Hey, our
Mhm.
asset's doing well, blah, blah, blah. And I just copied and pasted. So I wasn't putting it in a group text or anything else, but it does help out, and it does bring that, a core relationship with people and everything. Because if you just don't do it, you're like, oh, it's on wheels. Trust me, people have invested to other people that try to go, that now are with us.
Yeah.
And I had people that are like, hey, we're investing only with you, and I'm like, wow, why is that? I didn't, because I really get amazed sometimes. Like, oh, he's like, dude, he's like, you know that you text me like every single week. Sometimes I'm like, nah, I didn't think so. And he's like, well, you kept texting me everything that was going on with the Naples property and
Hmm.
this property, and I'm like, it was just, he's like, it was just something small, like, but he's like, hey, you text me that they were doing the workers were there and the general contract was down there from Texas. Yeah, our GC from Texas was at our Naples property for 14 days in a row.
Wow.
Usually they'll come down for a day, check on it, project manager, see you by. And I text my investors. I said, hey, you're working with a good team when the property manager's always there to see you when you come by, for once a month or whatever it may be that we come down there. But when a GC from Texas comes down and they're there for 14 days in a row, whatever it is, it's pretty cool. So I mean,
Yeah.
but Lincoln Management in Florida is really good, and we like them. We don't get who's the cheapest. We get who's the best for each project.
I love hearing that. So I want to take a quick transition over. Um, this is the Healthy Investor Podcast, and we like to talk about some healthy habits and routines and how they affect your life and your business, your personal life, and just sort of all around. You and I, became friends. I guess sort of end of last year, and we've had a few phone conversations. I was in Florida. We spent some time together earlier this year, and I see everything that you're doing from a real estate perspective, but also I'm watching you, and inspired by you because I see you up early just about every day, getting into the gym, getting yourself healthy, and doing those things. So, talk a little bit about that. Tell me a little bit about what that kind of how that started for you, and what your routine looks like.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, it's one of the things that, one of those values that others have, and when you go to these meetups, I mean, it's kind of, to Jake and Gina, there's like always, I think you're in it too, about always 10 to 20 people that would go out and start running at whatever 4 in the morning. I'm like, these guys are nuts. But but yeah, it's no matter if it's cold or hot or whatever it was, and they come back all sweaty and drenched, whatever. But it's just trying to figure out, where you belong in it. And I listened to Mark Evans' DM, and he's like getting up at 5:55. I was like, man, this dude's crazy. And I think at the time I was getting up at 8:30, 9:30, no alarm clock. Kind of like Eric Thomas is one of my motivational speakers I listen to, and he
Hmm.
talks about no alarm clock needed. But he gets up at like 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So my wife's like, "Oh, you're just gonna get whenever you get up," and lovingly, she's working her butt off with the kids with school and this and that, and I'm like, I got to do something. And when you eat what you want and do what you want, and you don't work out, you just kind of just have no mindset too. So my mindset was kind of off and on, and I don't know when it was. I had a real quick to backlash. I broke my tibia plateau back in April Mayish of COVID 2020,
Okay.
and didn't really work out. So I lost weight because I wasn't eating for a while, and then my family started feeding me and all that stuff. Like, here's breakfast, here's lunch, here's dinner, and then I wasn't exercising. So then I gained weight again towards the end of it. But long story in that, I was listening to Mark Evans' DM. I was like, I got to try that 5:55. It's like I couldn't get up 5:55. I pressed the snooze, and so instead of being awake at 8:30 or 9, it started being like 7 and 6:30 and 6:15. But eventually, I was setting those alarms at 5:55. Now I get up at 5:55. But now I actually set my alarm because my gym I go to in Clearwater, it's a recreational center. It's 6 a.m. So I was like, well, if I can go and get my Starbucks at 6, be at the gym at like 6:10, that's perfect. So now
Mhm.
I would get up at 6:45 or 6:30. I'm sorry, 5:45 5:45 or 5:35 now is how I set my alarm. And I'll press the snooze once or twice, and usually I'm up by 6:45, 6:50. Get my clothes all ready, brush my teeth, get all ready, go get my coffee. But now I get my Starbucks the night beforehand, tiny bit watered down, and I'll go to the gym, and I'm there at 6 o'clock when it's opening.
That's great.
So it was like 6:30, 6:15 going to the gym. So I go to the gym, Monday through Friday or Monday through Saturday, doing a little bit of weights, a lot of reps. I think I'm down about 15 to 17 pounds ish, kind of plateaued. I did a hire nutritionist. I got work from her about a month and a half ago.
Hmm.
Was lazy about it. I joined some other kind of a program, like a fasting program. I did keep that weight off, but got a nutritionist locally, and I think it's tomorrow. I have a meet up with her, and it's one of those meat fast, and
Hmm.
then get onto vegetables and everything else, and find out what I'm allergic to and everything. So I took a blood test, and but she really thinks I'm going to lose like 25, 30 pounds in this next few months. So I'm excited about that, and it's nice to lose the weight and be around the kids and have more activity, because when I come back from the gym, I'm usually taking out trash, doing something around the house before I even start getting ready to work and everything. So it's been nice, because I know when I got home before from doing something, I would go lay back down, go on the couch, but I'm in the kids' bedroom right now and everything hiding away. But usually I'm in the office and sitting up. I really want to now get a desk that elevates, so I'm standing now and all that.
Yeah.
So, but just trying to elevate and hear other people of how they've lost weight, and all that. So I mean, just telling people, what I'm doing and what I'm getting to, but I still have more goals of, dropping another 25, 30 pounds in this next, 3 months.
Well, it's great to see. It's great to see that change for you. I sort of had a very similar change, I guess probably in 2016. So I was, I've told the story before, but I was sort of stayed up late at night, watched late night TV, and, watched all the shows that come on. And then I wouldn't get to sleep until 12, 12:30, sometimes 1 o'clock in the morning, which meant that I wasn't waking up early in the morning. And I stumbled across, um, the Miracle Morning, which includes, reading, exercise, uh, visualization, affirmations, journaling, and meditation. And I just realized, I'm like, I need something like this in my life. And like you said, when you're sort of doing what you want whenever you want, like, okay, I'll eat whatever I want, I'll
Hmm.
sleep whenever I want, the focus isn't quite as strong. And the first thing I realized was, where am I going to make a shift, right? So in order to take these hours of sleep and adjust them to, I'm going to wake up at, I think I started at 7, and similar to you, and then next thing you know, it was 6:30, and then 6, and now I'm up between 5:30 and 5:45 every day. And where are those hours going to come from? Well, they're going to come from the wasted hours that I have the night before, where I was going to bed at 12, 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. Now I go to bed at a fairly normal time. I'm usually asleep 10,
Hmm.
10:30, and then, I get a solid 7.5 hours of sleep every night. But I feel different, right? So it's
Yeah.
it's it's cool to hear that you're doing that. And then the activity portion of it is also interesting to see, right? Because you would think, and I had to change this shift in mentality also. I used to think that, well, if I'm going to be running, if I'm going to be working out, if I'm going to be exercising, I'm probably going to be tired after I'm done doing that, right? Because I've just
Yeah,
pushed
me too.
myself. And at the end of the day, the truth is, especially if you can do it early in the morning, you feel more energetic throughout the day. Now, I'm tired in the evening earlier, but probably more productive throughout the day.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, very
So
cool.
yeah, I'm the same way. I mean, it's really really important, because I used to watch sports, and if there was a basketball game on at 10 o'clock on the West Coast, I would watch till 1:30. And
Hmm.
now, like you said, it's like I'm like, is this really important right now to watch this basketball, this football game, whatever it was? And I had some game that was like 11 o'clock, getting ready to start a couple of days ago. And it's like some Clipper, like something in Los Angeles, and that was the same thing. I'm like, I'm not getting into it. So I already watched one game when it was. I'm like, I'm done. So I went to bed like 11 o'clock. But the old me would have watched that game till 1:30, whatever it was, and But yeah, it's that mindset, that focus, because if you're groggy in the morning and everything else. But same thing as looking at your time of kind of like Mark Evans and a few others, and Tim Bratz talks about it and everything. Blocking your day. What did you
Yeah.
do with those wasted times? Because I was looking in like, oh man, like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, I was doing this, waste time, and even during your calls during the day, it's like 2 hours on Facebook, waste of time. So now, I mean, I look
Hmm.
at Facebook and I'll post stuff, but it's after 6 o'clock, and then my wife's like, "Why are you on the Facebook?" I'm like, "Well, I wasn't on it at all today." But so now I'm trying to find a VA, because my VA's Philippines and she's pretty busy, certain timing. But just trying to find somebody that can post and receive messages and everything else for me, so I can, be off of it. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Take
there's
that
lots
time.
of it's time blocking is very important, and everything else, but you got to use that time wisely that we're given.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I actually have started again. I did this once before, and I started it again this week. The Pomodoro method. Have you heard of the Pomodoro method?
I've heard about which one is that? I've heard of that briefly.
But essentially, with Pomodoro, the original the original method was that a Pomodoro is 15 minutes, so you do everything in 15-minute increments. But now they're different. There's a bunch of like clocks and calculators out there, but essentially the theory is, I'm doing them for 25 minutes. So I'll just set in a timer that says for the next 25 minutes, I'm going to focus on this and I'm going to get this next project done or make these phone
Oh
calls or do this.
yeah,
And then the alarm goes off and then I give myself a 10-minute break. And, if I have to run to the
yeah.
bathroom or I want to go grab a drink of water, and then, that has helped me back to what you were saying earlier. That has helped me to sort of say, okay, well, I'm not going to just let my mind wander and wind up on a social network or something like that. So
Well, that's that, because I think it's got to do with the Pomodoro sauce, like 15 minutes doing this, and we do something like that. I think, right?
yeah, the
Yeah.
Pomodoro tomatoes. Yep.
Yeah, okay. Because I mean, there's something to that, because I had time block like 2 hour slots of doing something, and my coach's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, I'm just going over deals." And he's like, "You should put in there, 15 minutes, 30 minutes of which deals you're going over, what you're going to accomplish, because after 20, 30, 40 minutes, you'll just kind of wander away, and I've kind of done this part of this
Yep.
2 hour slot." So,
Exactly.
and everybody's different, but that's why I do. So I do, my calls and Zooms and everything. I usually cut off 30 minutes. And somebody's like, "Hey, I want to talk an hour." I'm like, "Well, it's 30 minutes." But I had time to somebody like, "Well, you got to do 15 minutes." I'm like, "Dude, I can't do 8 hours of 15-minute increments. It's just too much." But you got to find out what works for you. But
Yeah.
have that, like, hey, call this investor and talk to them about this flex deal. Call this investor and ask them about the flex deal and this Atlanta deal. Call these, but instead of call these four investors, I'll kind of put half-hour increments in there. And sometimes I put one or two things to do in there if I know it's going to be a 10, 15-minute call. But being specific about that is pretty important on there as well. But it's kind of cool to see my investors like, "Oh yeah, man, I'm losing weight now too, or I'm working out now too," or my wife. I had one wife that called me. She goes, "My husband saw you about, oh, it was a push-up challenge or which one it was," and she's like, "Yeah, he was over obese, and oh, I was talking about time with the family Thursdays. It wasn't even working out. I apologize about that, but."
Hmm.
She goes, he's an attorney making a lot of money. And she goes, "I'm friends with you on Facebook." He's not, but I told him, "Hey, there's this guy Ryan that's doing this, and he takes his kids out every single Thursday from like 7:30 to 8:30 or 9, like an hour and a half each every week." And just was getting further and further away from the kids and everything. And she was like, "You pretty much save our marriage too, because our kids were like, I don't even see daddy. I don't care about the money and this and that, but just that quality time." And then he messaged me not too long ago. Goes, "Hey man, thanks." I'm like hanging out with my kids every single. I didn't do it during the week like you did, but every Saturday now, instead of going out with my guys golfing and this and that, it was family first. And he goes, "I saw that."
Hmm.
And he's like, instead of doing that and going, "Okay, I worked in the week," and then family, like that 30 minutes an hour at night dinner and even being late for dinner. He's like, "I take them out every single Saturday now for breakfast or lunch, whatever it is. I focus on them now." And I'm like, "Oh, how about the wife?" And he's like, "Dude, I'm taking her out now, like once a month, once every couple weeks." And same thing with my wife and I. I'm like, we haven't dated. We haven't really went out on a date night for a while, but I'll listen to, syndicators and people about that and listen to what they say. And I'm like, "Oh, I'm missing that." So every other week I try to plan a date night on Fridays with my wife now too. So it's just all those things to focus on, our spiritual side, our family. spending
Hmm.
time with them. And I'd rather have a older car and spend more time with family than have some brand new car and whatever else, and have time with the family. I'm just going tenting, camping with them just this last weekend, and then also just our health is very important, and even with our
Sure.
kids, we're teaching them about health and food and nutrition now as well. So
That's great. Well, yeah, that's such great thing that you're able to utilize your time to obviously focus on what your values are too. So very, very cool. So I want to transition into the final segment because I want to make sure that obviously we're respectful of your time too here as we're starting to get a little bit long. So the final section, we ask the same question of every guest, same three questions. So for you, Ryan, what's your definition of success?
I think my definition of success would be translating the time we have spending time of this investing in multifamily to less and less time of investing and everything into more and more time with family. So I'm working a lot of hours a day, but my goal is to be working 1 to 2 hours a day and spend the rest of the time with my family, and just more vacations with them, more time with them, more lunches, more breakfast, more dinners, more times at the gym with them. All of the
Mm,
pieces of these fitness, family, more time at their school, their homeschool, more time at their homeschool, more time at our church with them, and then also helping others out with money, and then helping others out with time. Of Man Up and Go is a fatherless kid organization I'm with, and just foster adopted kids, just more time with them, and being able to donate more money would be success to me.
that's great. Well, I'm glad you were able to speak about that because we didn't really get too deep into it. But one of the things that I recall from some of our conversations was your strong interest and desire in helping others. And I'm glad you were able to talk about that just a little bit because that's something that, quite frankly, I forgot to mention or forgot to bring up. But that was very impressive. You and I had lunch together earlier this year, and I remember you specifically talking about your goals to be able to spend more time with family, create a healthier you, and then help others. And that's really cool. So I'm glad we were able to get to that.
Yeah,
Um,
no, that's very important to me. Most people, their goals are to get to X amount of units or make X amount of dollars a year or a month or certain amount of net worth. And I know I was at a Rod Cleef event, and I put that I wanted to be able to have $200,000 a year to give to certain homeless people or single moms or certain ministries and everything. So that's very important. I mean, it's what a lot of people do when they have money, but some people don't do it when they don't have that money yet, and then sometimes don't ever do it because they're like, oh, I'll do it when I make $1 million. I'll do it when I have 10 million. But if you have 100,000 or 200,000, you should be able to do it then too. It makes
sure.
it easier. um, but yeah, it's good to give. It's good to help out others, and it's very important for us. And I do it with the kids, and it's good because they actually do things now. Like, oh, this money or this is for when the next homeless person I see, or the next person I think that needs food or needs drink. I'm going to give this bottle of water or something to them. So it really is cool when you show your kids these things too. And I'm like, my wife's like, well, where'd that hat go I got you? I'm like, oh, I gave it to this person on the side of the road, and I gave them my all the food I had and my shirt. And what? So yeah, it's really cool. And I take a picture and show my kids, like, what's that guy? He's like, oh, he's got my shirt on. He's got some water, and I gave him $20. And it's kind of what did you ask him if he's doing this? I'm like, I'm not going to judge the guy and girl if they're drinking, doing drugs, whatever it was. The guy said he was burnt. He was sunburnt. I gave him a hat, and he said he was hungry, and I gave him some food. But yeah, I think that's one of my passions to help as many others as I can. And we have so much time on this earth, and I think we should do it wisely.
Very nice. So, for someone who's new to investing or even learning to focus on their goals and their path to success, do you have a good book recommendation?
A good book recommendation. I knew you said that earlier, but I mean, I don't really read too many books besides the Bible and everything. So I mean, there's lots of good audios out there. I
Okay.
know Mark Evans has a book out there. I can't think of the title, and I know you said something about it earlier, but what is that book? I can't think of it right now, so I do apologize. But
Okay. Oh, good. So before we jump to the final question, first of all, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your knowledge. Continued success. I definitely, it's a lot of fun for me to see everything that you're involved in, and you're a good person, and your work ethic is shining through. So it's great to see that. How can people support you, and how can people reach out to you and touch base with you?
Well, I mean, I do have my phone number that I can kind of give out, and I'm on Facebook and everything as it's Ryan Dumas. My number is 727-729-2647. I also have Ryan at kingdomcre.us. And we do have a mastermind that I held. I usually run for 4 months at a time. Just started about a month ago. And then I have a couple of Facebook groups. So Invest in Multifamily US. We have a Kingdom CRE, and a couple other ones. We have Invest Passive Hoteliers that invest passively in apartments. And then I have doctors and attorneys that invest passively in apartments. But those are the sites that we have. My cell phone number and my email. But I'm on Facebook too. So look me up.
That's great. So yeah, I love seeing I'm in a couple of your Facebook groups, and you always add a lot of value there. So, if anyone's listening and interested, definitely check out some of those Facebook groups. And there are a lot of people, a lot of professionals that are in those groups with us that are continuing to add value too. So, put yourself in the right room with the right people there.
Yeah,
Final question.
multifamily. Oh yeah,
Oh,
the multifamily empire is one of those groups
yes.
that. Yeah, so one of the groups that a buddy of mine started, and I invited most of the people on there. I think we have about 2,000 people in there now. It's
Hmm.
called Multifamily Empire. But then I'm also in the deal room and my first million in multifamily. There are not my groups, but it's Jennings Smith and Yaden Smith that created those. But it's good being in those big groups, the big numbers, like the My First Million. I believe they were told by Mark Evans, deal maker DM, to create their own group, and there's like 25 or 26,000 people in that group. And then from there, they created the deal room, which is like around 300 people in that group. So again, it's all that 1, 2, 3% numbers again of things that work. Everything's in numbers, but yeah, being in those rooms, didn't touch on it, but having a coach, having mentors, learning from others that are smarter than you, learning from the 5 people you surround yourselves around with. But if you're hanging out in the bar late at night, you're gonna, be like the people that are in the bar late at night. If you hang around 5 investors and friends that invest that talk about, real estate, it's funny because you go to Halloween trick or treat. I'm like, so what are you doing? I got this new apartment, and so it's kind of hard to not talk about real estate, but being in them rooms that surround yourselves, but helping others out that don't know about what you're doing. But it is really good when you start hanging out people that are healthy spiritually, fitness
Hmm.
wise, and all those things, and you get to be around those people and be hopefully live longer and be in better shape and be able to do good things for others.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Ryan. I really appreciate you being on the show. Make sure you check him out, Ryan Dumas. If you're
See you
listening,
guys.
hope you got a lot of great value from this, and go out there and make it a great day. Thanks so much for joining me on the Healthy Investor Podcast. Check out the show notes for more information about connecting with our guest. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please head on over to iTunes and leave a positive rating and review. It would mean the world to me. I'm grateful for your support, and I wish you an abundance of success on your journey to healthy investments and a healthy life.